Somewhere inside a Chinese data center, 50,000 domestic chips ran in concert, long enough to train a model with 1.6 trillion parameters, a scale that, until recently, only Nvidia-powered clusters had touched. Meituan proved it could train a frontier-scale model without a single Nvidia chip. So why has nobody told us what it cost to do that? One training run, the LongCat run, 1.6 trillion parameters, 50,000 domestic chips, a number everybody reported, and a cost nobody will print. Meituan trained a 1.6 trillion parameter model on 50,000 domestic chips. So why has nobody told us what it cost? The obvious answer is modesty, or trade secrecy. China's technology companies sometimes underplay capability to avoid drawing regulatory or geopolitical attention. Several labs have published capability claims without full technical disclosure. Quiet confidence is a real posture, and there is nothing exotic about it. But trade secrecy explains withholding details about architecture, about training data, about which chips specifically. It does not explain the total absence of a power figure or an efficiency comparison. When a company clears a bar nobody thought it could clear, it publishes the time on the clock. Meituan did not publish the time. Modesty is leaving the trophy in a drawer. What Meituan did is closer to winning a race and then declining to say how long it took. Those are not the same gesture, and I held the modesty explanation for about 30 seconds before I noticed the difference. My first instinct was modesty or secrecy, and I want to be honest about that. Then I remembered, nobody who just beat Nvidia stays quiet. The silence is not humility, it is load-bearing. Meituan trained a 1.6 trillion parameter model on 50,000 domestic chips. So why has nobody told us what it cost? Go one level deeper and a more strategic explanation appears. Protecting the domestic chip suppliers from becoming the named target of the next sanctions round. If Meituan prints the specific chip model and the exact count, that is a very precise thing for policymakers in Washington to point at. The calculus is, the less specific the public record, the harder it is to write a targeted rule around it. Reports suggest, though no company has confirmed this directly, that reluctance to name hardware is partly protective of the supply chain, not just of the buyer. This logic is real, and it is documented in how other Chinese firms have handled supplier disclosure. Hiding a supplier's name is like blacking out a brand on a photograph. That is a legible move, with a legible purpose. But hiding your own energy bill is something else entirely. That is a different document, and you redact it for a different reason. Protecting a supplier from sanction scrutiny explains not printing a chip model number. It does not explain why Meituan won't print a total power draw, a training duration in floating point operation days, or a cost per token estimate. Those figures are internal. They don't expose a supplier. They expose the run's economics. And this is the point I kept returning to. If the economics were clean, those numbers would be in the press release. They are not in the press release. Meituan trained a 1.6 trillion parameter model on 50,000 domestic chips. So why has nobody told us what it cost? The real mechanism is this. The capability is genuine, but the efficiency gap is the part that undercuts the triumph. Export controls on advanced chips were designed not just to block access. They were designed to make domestic compute uneconomic at scale. The silence around LongCat's power consumption and chip utilization suggests that equation landed closer to its target than the announcement implied. Domestic artificial intelligence accelerators, by the company's own published specifications and by analyst estimates, carry a meaningful performance per watt and interconnect disadvantage relative to current Nvidia H100 and H200 class hardware. No independent benchmark has validated LongCat's training efficiency. The company's claim establishes that the run happened. It does not establish that the run was competitive on cost. Running 1.6 trillion parameters on 50,000 chips is one number. The electricity bill and the chip utilization rate are two others. Both are absent from every public document. Think of the export control as a sealed door with a price tag on the other side. The entire argument of "we don't need Nvidia" depends on the price tag being reasonable. Meituan opened the door. They just turned the tag around. 50,000 chips, if you stacked the server boards they live on, would rise roughly as tall as a 40-story building. That cluster ran. The question is whether it ran at a cost that makes the next 40-story building worth building. Imagine crossing a river. Nvidia's bridge has 8 lanes. The domestic bridge has 50,000 stepping stones. You can cross either way. The question is whether you would build a highway on the stepping stone route. I want to be precise about what I am and am not claiming here. I am not saying the run was faked, or that the chip count is wrong, or that LongCat is a bad model. I am saying that in every comparable public training disclosure, cost and efficiency are either front-page numbers or they are embarrassing ones. That is the pattern. Meituan's silence fits one side of it. The strongest bullish reading is that the milestone is real and it compounds. A 1.6 trillion parameter model trained on domestic hardware, whatever the cost, is a capability that exists now and did not exist before. Every subsequent run gets cheaper as yields improve and interconnect matures. The first transistor was not efficient either, and that did not determine where the transistor ended up. The strongest bearish reading is that an undisclosed cost in a context where cost is the central argument is almost always an uncomfortable one. If the efficiency gap is large enough, the "we don't need Nvidia" narrative is not false. It is just very expensive, which is a different kind of problem for an industry trying to scale. Both readings accept the same fact. The run happened, and the economics are hidden. The distance between triumph and cautionary tale is exactly the number nobody will print. Which brings us to the wrong question. The question everyone has been asking is whether China can train a frontier model without Nvidia. They did. That question is closed. The run happened. The better question is, what did doing it without Nvidia actually cost? In watts, in time, in yield, in dollars per token? And why is that number the one thing nobody in this story will say out loud? Because the cost is the only part of this story that the export controls were actually designed to control, and the silence tells you the controls found their mark. An export control is a lock, and a lock tells you what someone valued enough to seal. The interesting move here is not the lock itself. It is that Meituan, on the winning side of the lock, has chosen to seal a door of their own. The export control was the first lock. The silence around the economics is a second one, built from the inside. Read it backward. What you seal is what you are protecting. Meituan sealed the cost. That tells you more about where the pressure landed than any benchmark would. My read is that the LongCat run is a genuine engineering milestone and a carefully managed communications object at the same time. Those two things are not in conflict. You can cross the river on stepping stones and still prefer that nobody publishes the crossing time. That training run, one cluster, 50,000 chips, 1.6 trillion parameters, one undisclosed electricity bill, is sitting in a Chinese data center right now. And the number that would settle every argument about it has not appeared in any press release, any technical paper, or any leak I can find. The chip ban was supposed to make this unaffordable, and the only thing we know for certain is that Meituan would very much like us not to know whether it was. If Meituan published a full efficiency breakdown tomorrow, power per token, training duration, yield rate, would it change how you read this milestone? Tell me in the comments what number you would want to see first. If you want to keep tracking where the real gaps are versus where the announcements say they are, subscribe. That is the only thing this channel does.